We've been working through Hojo Undo, and we've been dividing it into sort of discrete sections. So the kicks at the beginning, the 3 kicks, and there's 2 punches, and there's 3 strikes. The stepping off drills clearly go together. And this brings us to the final section, which is perhaps unrelated, but they make a nice little group together. And it begins with the fingertip strikes. So from here, we start in the formal sanshin, and we do a slide step, and then trapping and dropping. So this is clearly a sinking movement. And then we extend and strike with the fingertips, so clearly we're rising and driving off the rear foot. And then we come back to neutral. We slide back, sink again, and strike back to neutral. So this has rising and sinking implied in it. And with a lot of these kinds of these body mechanics, there's an emphasis unspoken of, well, what's the middle of all that? So there's some sort of ideal position between rising and sinking that's going to be our ideal sanshin. And at the same time, in our most sunk position, we should still feel that we're strongly in sanshin, but in just the most sort of compressed version of sanshin. If we're too low, we lose stability, we lose structure, and it doesn't work. And so there's a right amount. When we extend, similarly, we can drive with a lot of power, which of course we don't have if we just extend the arms. So we're going to drive off the rear foot, but again, we can go too far and come out of a sanshin. So there's something we could say perhaps is an ideal sanshin position between rising and sinking, but there's a way to sink and still be in sanshin, and there's a way to rise and still be in sanshin. So there's a range in there. As I said, the initial one, the first one, starts from a formal sanshin, and we slide and grab. And it might be a nice variation that we might institute to say we're going to do that every time. We'll slide and grab, hit, trap, get back, and then go back to a formal sanshin. For now, the way we've been, this has been passed on. Once we do the initial one, we leave the hands together, etc. The next set in this Hojo Undo are these wrist strikes, koi no shipu uchi, tate uchi. And this is an application, again, rising and sinking to begin with, of this hand position. And it's saying that if we drop, if we sink, become more compressed, we can use that to drop the arms. Notice that there's very little power, even if we sink the stance, in doing this. This is not a strong movement. But from a sanshin position, we can drop the elbows. We can also feel that we're dropping the wrist. That whole strong structure is dropping. That's the initial part. Notice that the hands stay in a formal sanshin position. Many people make the mistake of going here to the center. The trouble with that is that you lose the striking surface. So we're dropping here, and we're actually striking with this corner of the wrist rather than this blunt edge here. And then as we go up, and this is where the koi part comes. The koi is a fish, and these are fish tails, and so the wrists lead, and so the hands, the fingers are like the tails of the fish that come up. And again, if we do this, you're hitting with this blunt end. This is a sharper corner. It's hitting right there. So we go like this and this. And then the next part of this movement is opening. And this is opening and also coiling. So we're opening, and opening means that we're bringing our shoulder blades together to open the chest. And this brings power. This is quite a weak movement, generally speaking. So this is part of what sanshin teaches us, that this is not such a good idea because we're very easily trapped this way. But it can happen, and we need to have something that we can do with that. We need to be able to come out in this direction with some power, and there's not much here in my arms, so the way I power it is to bring the shoulder blades together. And then we close the same kind of way. So that whole set goes ich, ni, san, shi, rising, sinking, opening, closing. And then the final set in Hojo Undo, koi no shipu uchi, yoko uchi, is wrist strikes just going to the side. So clearly there's some sort of rotation of the body going into a coiled, and you might say uncoiled position here. This is quite a powerful movement, particularly this way, over the forward foot, but it can be relatively weak this way. We can feel that we're weak this way. And this is relates to doing a circle block over the forward foot. When we do that, unlike over the rear foot, when we do one over the forward foot, there's a sense of pulling and maybe striking off the rear foot. When we circle over the rear foot, we need to be pushing. And we see this dramatically in the kiwi Dutch kinds of applications. So similarly here, we're not pulling, because that's making this weak, we're extending off the rear foot to have a kind of a pushing application. So we're striking here, and then we feel that we're pushing here. And then we end this whole set with breathing exercise, Shinkokyu, heels touching. We breathe in, and we breathe out, all through the nose. If you've had a very vigorous practice, you might breathe out through the nose. Or sorry, you breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth. But once you get it under control, all through the nose. See you in class.